of people all over America are saying 1048, the password for losing up to 10 pounds in 48 hours with the Hollywood.
Want to look better on the outside? Feel better on the inside. 7 days is all it takes with the Jumpstart.
Yo, what is going on, guys? Troy Ashton here, your shredded brother from another mother, and today we're going to get into something so important because I've been blasted with questions about the keto diet, intermittent fasting. What I'm going to do is help you decide what diet is best for your short-term fat loss needs. So I'm going to break down the pros and the cons of the keto diet, intermittent fasting, paleo, if it fits your macros, low fat, and even vegan. And then after that, I'm gonna share with you something that I call the CRAVE diet that I invented myself, that I actually think is better than all of the fat loss diets that I just mentioned, that I recently did myself for about 2.5 weeks before a recent photo shoot and got in what I think is the best shape of my life.
Hey, make sure you subscribe because every single day we have a new video on shredding and aesthetics and sometimes just straight up entertainment. So subscribe, hit that notification bell so YouTube will blow up your inbox and let you know it is time to get shredded. And if you do that, we will send you a ferocious little baby lion straight to your house.
So the very first diet is none other than the keto diet. Now this is the one that's been getting a ton of hype recently. And let's break down exactly what the keto diet is. So the keto diet can be characterized as a diet very low in carbohydrates. In fact, you will be eating less than 30 to 50 grams of carbohydrates daily, and most of those are going to be from vegetables. Now, very high fat, moderate protein, extreme low carb. Now, the keto diet actually is much higher in fat than what you're probably imagining, so you actually end up consuming more fat than you do protein. Now, does the keto diet work? Now what happens is your body enters a state called ketosis after kind of a short transitional period of about 5 to 7 days. Now, does the keto diet work? Yes. If you are in a caloric deficit, the keto diet will work. And I'm gonna break down the pros and the cons really quickly, but it's so important that you have to understand how all these diets work. With the keto diet, you are completely eliminating carbohydrates from your diet. So yes, it's much easier to get in a caloric deficit. But let's say, for example, you have two identical twins, same DNA, same metabolism, and one of those consumes 3,500 calories of avocado, bacon, hot dogs, tons of fatty meat, almond butter, tons of nuts, and let's say that their total daily calories is 3,500, but they have no carbs, and they are strictly on the keto diet. Then we take the other identical twin, and they're only consuming 1,900 calories per day of Twinkies and ice cream and candy and pretty much all carbs and junk food. Which person will lose weight faster over the course of 2 weeks? The person consuming 1,900 total calories. And this is actually seen before, where a doctor ate nothing but Twinkies and donuts and French fries and McDonald's food and still lost weight because he was in a caloric deficit. So the keto diet really is just a mechanism to get your body into a caloric deficit easier. All right, let's get into the pros and the cons of the keto diet. And I am not a fan of the keto diet, and I'm gonna explain why in just a second. But first, let's get into the good benefits of it. Number one, if you struggle on a diet of you're always hungry all the time and you constantly have cravings, the keto diet is really beneficial because if you say consume 500 calories of steak and cabbage with a little bit of, say, olive oil and butter, a typical keto meal, high fat, high protein, that's gonna make you much more full than, say, 500 calories of bread and pasta and starchy carbohydrates. So it does have, the best keto meals are gonna be very high in fat and high in fiber. That's gonna keep you full for longer periods of time while keeping that insulin nice and low, so you're not gonna crave as many sugary foods. Now, another thing, it is fantastic for type 2 diabetics or pre-diabetics. So anyone who struggles with insulin resistance, anybody who has elevated blood sugar levels, this is obviously gonna be a fantastic choice for you because you can, number one, get in a caloric deficit easier by completely eliminating carbs. And number two, you're gonna actually help reverse that insulin resistance, and you're gonna be able to keep your insulin levels nice and low and hopefully reverse those pre-diabetic symptoms. Number three, it's flat out easier to get in a caloric deficit by eliminating carbohydrates. There's only 3 macronutrient groups: protein, carbs, and fats. Obviously, if you're working out and you want to maintain muscle mass, you're not going to reduce your protein. So most of these diets typically will eliminate fats or carbohydrates. The keto diet eliminates carbohydrates and goes very high in fats. So it's just gonna make your life a lot simpler getting into a caloric deficit, and also eliminating sugar and keeping the sugar content in your diet as low as humanly possible is just an overall fantastic benefit of any diet. Obviously, sugar is linked to obesity, type 2 diabetes, and a lot of major health implications. Now, the cons of the keto diet, and this is most important to note, that the best benefits of the keto diet when you compare it to other diets was in very obese people with type 2 diabetes. Now, I want to ask you a question. How many professional athletes in the NBA, the NFL, professional tennis, high-level athletes who have to put a ton of power, a ton of strength, a ton of muscular endurance into their training and into their competitions follow the keto diet? When I did some research, less than 1%. So the reason for this is completely eliminating muscle glycogen is going to decrease your power output. So if you're a strength athlete, you're trying to maximize your muscle mass, your strength, hit PRs in the gym, going on a keto diet is a very bad idea. Number two, your workout intensity suffers. The number one pre-game snack for NBA players is actually a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because glycogen and glucose is just a preferred fuel source for your body. So that's why NBA players and NFL guys, before the Super Bowl, I can promise you the week before, you're not going to see like the linebackers and the wide receivers and the running backs going on a keto diet. They're loading their body up with glycogen because you're going to have an increased power output performance just by having glycogen in your muscles. Number three, slower muscle gains. It is a matter of fact that protein synthesis and glucose and glycogen in your system go hand in hand. The more protein, you're going to initiate more protein synthesis, the more insulin and glucose and glycogen that is in your system. And this leads me to my next point. Insulin is the most anabolic hormone in your body. According to the book Advanced Nutrient Timing, insulin post-workout is in fact more anabolic than even testosterone. So having just say a little bit of carbohydrates after your workout can be very beneficial and be very easy to also lose body fat rapidly. And then also it's just very restrictive. I know if you're like me, you probably love your carbohydrates. Most people love carbohydrates, even if it's in moderation. If you're having 150 grams of carbohydrates a day, most of it post-workout, you can still lose fat rapidly, which I'm going to dive into in the CRAVE diet. And just going on like 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrates all day is very restrictive and not very enjoyable. And then also the Keto Flu. There is a transitional period of, I think, 5 to 7 days where your body is transitioning from carbohydrates, it's transitioning into ketones as a preferred fuel source, and many people have reported keto flu, which has just a ton of very negative symptoms. And then also, it's been proven time and time again, most notably by the China study, that consuming high amounts of animal fat is very bad for our health long term. It causes cancer and a lot of other bad health issues, so high amounts of animal fat, never a good thing in any diet. So next up is intermittent fasting, and I follow this diet throughout the year. And it's actually a diet that I enjoy. I actually like it much better than the keto diet, but the mechanism is you have a much smaller eating window. So instead of say eating all day, you have a 16-hour window where you're fasting, and then you have a 6 to 8 hour window where you can consume all of your calories. Now, does intermittent fasting work? Yes, it will work just like the keto diet if you are in a caloric deficit. Now, the reason that I like intermittent fasting much more than the keto diet is there are some hormonal and anti-inflammation benefits to it, and it just allows a lot more flexibility. So the pros are, with intermittent fasting, you get to eat these giant meals. So I know whenever I do intermittent fasting, I'll typically break my fast as my post-workout meal, and then you get these huge meals where you can consume like 1,000 calories. And it's really hard on any other diet where you don't have a small eating window to have 1,000 calories in one meal and still be in a caloric deficit for the day. So if you're somebody who enjoys really large meals, intermittent fasting is awesome. It's not restrictive on any macro group. So protein, carbs, fats, everything is fair game. In fact, I typically recommend following an 80-20 rule. 20% of the foods you crave, 80% clean while you do intermittent fasting. Lower inflammation in your body. When your body's not digesting food around the clock, 24 hours, it just allows your body to naturally heal. And I did notice that I had increased energy when I'm intermittent fasting, and I do attribute this to the anti-inflammation and hormonal benefits. It's going to improve your body's sensitivity to insulin. So if you struggle with insulin resistance, it could be a great diet to try out while still not completely eliminating carbohydrates. And fasting for long periods of time, typically 20 to 24 hours, has been shown to increase human growth hormone and testosterone. So it's got some awesome hormonal benefits if you're looking to build lean muscle mass while following intermittent fasting. Now, the cons are, if you're not used to it, the first couple times you do it, you will get hungry because not eating for 16, 18 hours, for me it's really easy because I've done it a bunch, but if you don't know how to implement little hacks like drinking sparkling water and drinking coffee and just doing little like drink hacks, you will get hungry. If you're diabetic, this could be dangerous. Obviously not eating for really long periods of time, depending if you're type 1 or type 2, can be tough for your body to get used to. And number 3, another con, more timing is required. So it's really careful. It's like a careful balancing act of when you're gonna do your workouts and when you're gonna do everything when you do intermittent fasting. Typically, I have fantastic energy when I work out at the end of doing intermittent fasting, but maybe you're not like that. So it does take some planning and some timing, especially if you have a restricted workout window and you have a full-time job. It can reduce your workout intensity, once again, if not timed properly. So if the only time you have to work out is, say, towards like the start of your fasting window, this also can be very bad because then you have no post-workout calories built in. So once again, timing is everything with intermittent fasting, and then side effects do include dizziness, fatigue, and lack of concentration, although personally, I did notice I have increased concentration on intermittent fasting. So those are the pros and cons. It's a diet that I actually follow throughout the year off and on. But once again, I think the CRAVE diet is much better. The third diet is probably the most fun, and it is called If It Fits Your Macros, where the If It Fits Your Macros diet basically requires you to understand exactly how many calories you need to consume, and you can fill that amount with any food that you want. So you could have pizza, donuts, cupcakes, cheesecake, whatever you want. Does the If It Fits Your Macros diet work? Yes, the diet will work if you are in a caloric deficit. Caloric deficit, you see a common theme here, guys? You gotta be in a caloric deficit for every single one of these diets to work. Now, the pros and cons of this. The cons are you still have to have an exact idea of the calories you need to consume every single day. So, you know, you can have 2,300 calories of cheesecake and pizza and ice cream and donuts, but that is gonna require you to figure out exactly how many of those items you can eat before you are over the 2,300 calories. Now, fluctuating energy and blood sugar levels. This is a big one because if you're eating whatever you want, you're gonna have these like up and down insulin spikes. You're gonna have fluctuating blood sugar levels. Your energy is gonna come crashing down, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I personally don't like the If It Fits Your Macros diet. Another thing is going to be harder to stay in a caloric deficit having a lot of low fiber foods. So not eating a ton of fiber and having like a lot of empty calories fill up your daily caloric intake, it's gonna make it very tough to stay in a caloric deficit. It's just a proven fact that high fiber foods, healthy fats, these are the foods that are gonna make you stay really full throughout the day. You can have a very nutritionally poor diet. Obviously, if you're eating Pop-Tarts and ice cream and cookies, cheesecake and donuts, I could go on and on. You're gonna have a very nutritionally poor diet. Lack of antioxidants will also be in your diet. You're gonna have more inflammation in your body. And then last but not least, slower workout recovery just from eating a bunch of processed junk. Now the pros of this diet, eat whatever you want, Pop-Tarts, donuts, candy, I've said it all before. If muscle building is your goal and you have enough protein in an If It Fits Your Macros diet, this can actually be beneficial if you time post-workout, as insulin is highly anabolic. Obviously more flexibility than most diets, and I believe the perfect storm is an 80-20. 80% clean, 20% whatever you want on the If It Fits Your Macros diet. Next up is the Paleo diet. Now the mechanism behind the Paleo diet is we were gonna eat like our ancestors. So basically 200 years ago, there wasn't processed food, there wasn't all this added sugar in our food, so you basically could eat anything that was available a couple hundred years ago. Now, does a paleo diet work? Yes. Once again, if you are in a caloric deficit, the paleo diet will work. It is, in fact, very healthy. Now, the pros and cons. Let me get into the cons of the paleo diet first. Number one, it can get expensive. Now, you're gonna eat lots of high-quality foods. You're basically eliminating breads and pastas and rices, anything processed, anything made by a machine, completely eliminated on the paleo diet. Low carbohydrates on the paleo diet. You're pretty much only eating fruits and vegetables as your carb source, so it can hinder athletic performance, much like in keto when I said that our muscles perform optimally as far as power output is concerned when we have glycogen in our system. And then no grains and no dairy, so it is a bit restrictive and it could be very difficult to follow if you're vegetarian, since it's also going to exclude, you actually cannot eat beans, you can't eat any oats or lentils, things like that. So if you're a vegetarian, it's going to be very hard to get your protein in. Tons of elimination on this diet, so you do have very limited food choices. No legumes, no dairy, no wheat, no potatoes, no milk, no yogurt, no cheese, no sugar, no high-fat meats, and no processed foods at all. You see what else we have to eliminate? And no salty processed foods. So those are the cons, but the pros of the paleo diet are, number one, more likely to eat clean than other diets. So any food that was available 200 years for the most part is going to be very clean. It's not going to be processed at all. It's going to have a lot of nutritional value to it. Very anti-inflammatory. The paleo diet is awesome for anti-inflammation. It's going to give you a higher intake of proteins and healthy fats. You're gonna feel more full on this diet compared to others because most of your calories are coming from nuts and seeds, fruits, veggies, and high quality meats. You can lose weight fast just due to the sheer fact that you're gonna have limited food choices. Very high quality protein is characteristic of the paleo diet, so it's very good for aesthetic bodybuilding. Wild caught seafood, high quality lean red meats are gonna be on the paleo diet. So overall, very good aesthetic bodybuilding diet, but for me, just a little bit too restrictive. I do think that eating potatoes and rice, especially post-workout, is very beneficial for muscle building and athletic performance. And it was even scientifically shown by anabolicmen.com to increase testosterone, having the right type of carbohydrates at the right times. Next diet type is none other than low fat, and the mechanism behind the low fat diet is fats are 9 calories per gram, carbs and protein are 4 calories per gram. So by having your fats say less than 50 grams total per day, it is going to be easier to stay in a caloric deficit. Now, the result of this diet is, will you lose weight? Yes, once again, if you are in a caloric deficit on the low-fat diet, you will lose weight. Now, the pros of the low-fat diet are you're gonna capitalize on insulin and protein synthesis. So obviously having a lot of glycogen, a lot of insulin in your system is going to result in some lean muscle mass gains and is probably the best choice of a diet if you are in fact trying to build muscle and burn fat at the same time. It's just gonna require very precise timing and very precise calorie counting. So like I said, great for muscle building, absolutely fantastic for workout intensity. Your muscles are going to, the power output of your muscles, the exercise endurance, the muscular endurance you're gonna have with more carbs in your system is going to be much better than say a restrictive diet like keto. Obviously it's great if you enjoy carbohydrates. If you just crave things like cookies and crackers and really starchy carbs much more than you crave say avocado and peanut butters and things like that, it's gonna be a good diet for you. And it is the only diet where you can eat 250 to 300 grams of carbs and still be in a caloric deficit. And like I said, you can consume large meals rich in carbs. Now, the cons of the low-fat diet are it is not good if you are carb sensitive or insulin sensitive. So pre-diabetic, type 2 diabetic, obviously not going to be a great diet for you. Insulin spikes do make it harder to stay in a deficit. So you're spiking your insulin and then it comes crashing down and then you start to crave sugar once again. That's going to make it much harder. You're going to probably be hungrier being in a caloric deficit and being on a low-fat diet compared to say the paleo diet or the keto diet. You should have built-in carbohydrate cycling into this diet, and I'm gonna get to this when I get into the CRAVE diet, because if you don't have carb cycling built in and you're eating the same amount of carbs every single day, even on non-workout days, you're not gonna have that great of results. Dietary fats add up very quickly on this as well. For instance, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, already 16 grams of fat. If you say go out to eat and they use vegetable oil when they cook your food, you might have 20 to 30 grams of fat just from that alone. So staying under say 40 to 50 grams of total fat each day is going to require you to be very precise anytime you go out to eat. You're going to have to read nutrition labels because there are a ton of hidden fat sources in foods. In fact, having a little bit of peanut butter, some mixed nuts, some added oil in your food, you're already at 30 to 40 grams of total fat per day. So I would say the biggest con is you just have to be very careful when counting your calories, because it's very rare to find any food that has absolutely no fat in it. In fact, liquid egg whites are the only food that I can think of that have literally like 0 grams of fat. So be careful counting your fat calories on the low-fat diet, and you stay in a caloric deficit, you're gonna have some good results. Next up is the vegan diet. Now, the mechanism behind the vegan diet is no animal products. Pretty self-explanatory. Does the vegan diet work to lose body fat quickly? Yes, you will lose fat quickly on a vegan diet if you are in a caloric deficit. Now, The cons of the vegan diet, it can be really low in vitamin D, vitamin B12, and calcium. Another thing is false expectations. Simply being vegan does not mean you are healthy. In fact, if you go to a grocery store, you're going to see a ton of vegan options that are processed that are bad for you. In fact, Oreo cookies are a vegan snack. I mean, technically Oreos have no animal products, no milk, nothing in them. And last time I checked, Oreos were not healthy, and tons of the processed meats and different things that they have, processed cheeses, definitely I would not categorize as healthy. It can be much tougher to hit your macro totals, especially when bodybuilding, because there's not many vegan foods that are really high in protein while also being low in fat and low in carbohydrates. In fact, much of the high protein source vegan foods that I've seen, take for instance like lentils or quinoa, they also have a lot of total carbohydrates, so you just got to be careful when counting your macros on a vegan diet, because while you are getting, say, protein in some items, you're also getting a lot of fat and added carbohydrates, so being in a caloric deficit while getting enough protein can be challenging. You have very limited and unhealthy choices while dining out. In fact, if you go to any mainstream chain in the United States, all you're gonna have is a really shitty, unhealthy processed like black bean burger or vegan burger out at a restaurant. Socially, it can be a bit of a nightmare if you're out with friends and you're out to eat and you say it just like, I don't know, I'm just throwing out random places, like you're at like Olive Garden or Outback Steakhouse, Applebee's, any type of like traditional place in America. It can be really tough socially to find something that you want to eat, and it can also take time. It can take a lot of extra time to learn how to cook as a vegan, and any type of radical change is going to be tough on your body. Now, the pros of the vegan diet, it can promote greater self-control, so just switching to a pure vegan diet is gonna promote greater self-control with everything in your life. You're gonna have increased antioxidant intake, lower inflammation in your body. It's gonna be easier to be in a deficit while increasing your veggies and your fiber content. It may help lower cholesterol, and it may be the best short-term solution to fixing really extreme health problems such as high cholesterol and type 2 diabetes. So alright guys, so this is my favorite diet of all time. I kind of invented it. I call it the CRAVE diet. It's a combination of carb cycling and flexible fasting, and it allows you to eat the foods that you crave every single day, take advantage of insulin and carbohydrate timing, actually build muscle and lose body fat rapidly. So the pros of this CRAVE diet are you can consume carbohydrates when needed for optimal muscle recovery and fat loss. So interspersing periods of high insulin post-workout and then low insulin periods ideal for fat loss. You can structure your diet to actually eat the foods that you crave every single day. It's going to be easier to create a deficit with the 3-hour rule on the CRAVE diet. So instead of intermittent fasting where you're really strict, the CRAVE diet basically, the first 3 hours at the minimum all the way up to 6 hours of waking up, you're not eating any calories whatsoever. So you're pushing back your calories. And even pushing back your calories by 3 hours has incredible benefits to it. And psychologically, it's much easier to do this than say go on like a 16 to 18 hour stretch of not eating, like you do with say intermittent fasting. You create a built-in reward each day. So by breaking your fast, so after the 3 to 5 hour window is up, eating the food that you crave to break your AM fast or post-workout is just psychologically a game changer on any type of diet. And then, in my opinion, carb cycling and flexible fasting is the perfect storm. So carb cycling, having low, moderate, and high carb days every single week, and then flexible fasting, where we are not eating for the first 3 hours, and then we're breaking our fast at the right times, either post-workout or having the high sugar carbs when our body actually needs them and craves them, instead of late at night when our body's going to store them, is a game changer. And then you get to enjoy high carb days. So you have one high carb day built into the CRAVE diet. Not as rigid as most other diets. You're not eating the same amount of calories every single day. And it allows you to save your calories for later in the day. Now, let me get into the cons of the CRAVE diet. First of all, it takes more knowledge and skill to set up for optimal results. Like I said, you have carbohydrate cycling. You have carbohydrate timing. You have flexible fasting intertwined into this. So you have low, medium, and high carb days. And you really got to know how to structure it around your workouts. So the CRAVE diet will take a little bit more time to set up, but now that I'm kind of in the groove of it, it requires no thinking on my part right now. I just know like, okay, I'm doing this workout, it's a moderate carb day. Maybe I'm doing only high intensity interval training. I'm not doing any weight room workouts, so I'm low carb. And then I do high carb days on my leg days or my most intense training sessions. And then you also have to be careful on the CRAVE meals. So the CRAVE meal is the meal that you're craving every single day. The rule of thumb is it can't be more than 500 calories or 20% of your total daily calories. And then you must set up your morning the right way so you're not hungry first thing upon waking. So I typically drink a lot of water, or I'll drink some hot water and some lemon juice. I'll drink some coffee and cinnamon. I'll have some apple cider vinegar. I'll have some sparkling water. Different mechanisms to make yourself full for the first 3 to 5 hours of waking up. All right, guys, so those were the pros and the cons of all of the biggest diets right now in the world. And there's no perfect diet. There's a perfect diet for your situation and your exact lifestyle. So that's what I really wanted to put this video together to help you guys pick the best diet for you. And also, if you guys want a more detailed breakdown of the CRAVE diet, let me know in the comments below. I'm actually contemplating maybe like working on a program or some type of diet structure to help people kind of follow the CRAVE diet. So let me know if you guys would be interested in that, and let me know if you maybe want a complete video breakdown on how you can set up the CRAVE diet for your exact lifestyle and your exact situation. If you have any questions whatsoever about any of these diets, and if you've personally done all of them or a few of them and you have personal feedback, I would love to hear what you have to say in the comments below. So thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys in the next video.